my friends, and welcome once again to another live episode here of the Red Delta Project podcast, where we take a fundamental approach to diet and exercise to help you to be fit and live free. As always, I'm Matt Schifferly from the Red Delta Project. Today's episode is sponsored by the entirety here of the RDP library, all of my books on basically focusing on building as much muscle and strength as possible, primarily through bodyweight training, but also a couple of things in there that help you save a lot of time and energy, like my book, Micro Workouts, Overcoming Isometrics, Smart Bodyweight Training, and so on. All of the resources I'm going to be talking about in today's episode are linked down below in the description. It does help to support the channel because, after all, this podcast is free for you, but is not free for me. But today's episode, I promise, is going to be a special one because in the last week's episode, I got a lot of folks asking about my next potential book, the one that I've been working on, actually technically been working on for the better part of 10 to 15 years. This is the entirety of what the Red Delta Project endeavored to become, is to essentially figure out how does fitness work? Because I've been working in this business for over 20 years now, and I've worked in big gyms and small towns and big towns. Some gyms that would have over 1,000 people come in every single day. Some gyms that would see a handful of regulars from the lunch crowd, and you'd know everybody by name and everything in between. And one of the fundamental truths that became more aware of in my psyche as I was working all these different jobs was the fact that how we think fitness works and how it's actually working in the real world are not at all even close to itself. For example, you ask people like, oh, if you follow this diet or you eat this way or you avoid these foods, you're going to lose weight. But there's loads of people who do that and they never lose the weight they want to lose. And yet at the same time, there's a lot of people who lose and keep the weight off and they never follow any of that stuff. Same thing with the exercise. Oh, if you lift the weight, you're going to build the big, strong muscles. And if you do the cardio, you're going to have endurance like crazy. And yet again, being in these gyms 10, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, and you look at just the people, just observing them, it's like, but most of the people here are doing lots of cardio, never lose the weight. Most of the people here are lifting weights, never get bigger and stronger. So what in the world is going on? And that's what was the impetus for me to start this journey to figure out, how does fitness actually work? And what I've discovered and learned over the years is that most of our approaches and beliefs about how we lose weight and build muscle and get in better shape are based largely off of pseudoscience. They're based largely off of correlation rather than causation. And they're based off of, believe it or not, a lot of superstition that's just kind of permeated throughout the years that we never step back and be like, hold on, wait a minute, is that really actually true? And so what I've been doing over the past 10, 15 years is doing exactly that and boiling down into the root essence of why does fitness work? Because obviously it does. A lot of people lose weight and keep it off. A lot of people get bigger and stronger and get better performance, and they build a much healthier and more fit body. But when you look into the actual methodology between all these successful cases, you almost never find a consistent methodology to them. You almost never find a consistent dietary pattern or a consistent way of exercising. Like, this guy over here is big and jacked and strong. What do you do? Oh, lots of machines, lots of high volume. Oh, okay. High volume work and machines and high tech equipment. Okay, great. That's the way we build muscle and strength. Well, what about this guy over here who does nothing but works out in the park with bodyweight training and has a rusty kettlebell, and he's big and strong and jacked too, and he does low volume training? Like, wait a minute. You guys are doing exactly the opposite things, and yet you're still getting the same result. Same thing happens with diet all the time. I remember one time I was engaging in not so much a debate, but I was just watching this back and forth like a tennis match between two individuals. And one person here was a staunch diehard vegan, and they're like, oh man, once I gave up the animal products, I lost weight and my inflammation markers went way down and I got so much healthier, and I got lots of whole grains and lots of carbs and lots of plant-based foods. And then there was this other guy over here who was kind of doing a paleo carnivore kind of thing. It's like, dude, once I got rid of all the grains and once I got rid of all the hard carb stuff, I ate a lot more animal products. My health improved. My inflammation went down. It's like, You guys are literally getting the same result from exactly the opposite approaches. So obviously, it can't be the approach. It can't be the method that we're using. And yet, so much of what leads you astray and wastes your time and wastes your energy and leads to so much more effort on uh, stress, mind, body, and lifestyle is coming from just simply following these paths that lead to nothing but dead ends. And even if they do work, they require so much more time and energy and effort. That's such a waste. So today, what we're doing is we're looking at the general outline of what my next book is going to be about, which is the fundamental approach to fitness, how fitness actually works, and how you can use that to save a lot of time, a lot of energy, get much more direct about real results that you really want, and doing things your own way to save a lot of time and energy and stress on mind, body, and lifestyle. And as always, I'm going to be reading your questions here and answering them as well. Let me see if I can't. Oh, good. I can zoom in like crazy. You have to bear with me a little bit here, folks. I am using a new software and hardware setup and audio and everything. So if it seems a little bit different, that's what has been going on. Woodrock is back. Raf is saying, Matt, can a calisthenics workout burn as many calories as a lifting session with heavy weight? The answer to that is, of course it can. Anything you do can burn as many calories as anything else. Walking can burn as many calories as running. Lifting can burn as much as cardio and stuff. Because always remember, my friends, that the single biggest influence to how many calories you burn is not what you're doing, it's how long you're doing it. Okay, so there are three main variables that determine how much calories you're burning. Because really, when you're doing physical activity, this is one of the things we learned from a fundamental approach, which I'll get into in a bit, is that exercise doesn't do anything at all. Diet and exercise habits don't do anything whatsoever. That's different from what's already happening. The whole reason why fitness works is it because it takes the fundamental processes that govern your health and fitness and it changes the speed at which they are happening. It doesn't take anything. It's like, well, this never happens until you exercise. Or once you eat this food, this thing that's happening stops happening. That never happens. But you hear this a lot in our fitness culture. You do this and you start burning fat. You do this, you stop storing fat and all these things. That's complete science fiction. That's not at all how the body works. You're always burning fat and calories. You're also always storing them as well. It's the speed and the rate of which it's happening between the two ratios that is determining your results. So when it comes to your ability to burn fat and calories, you have three variables. You have how much muscle you're using. Okay, so if you're doing wrist curls, you're not using a lot of muscle, so you're not going to burn calories much faster. But if you're doing full body activities, that's going to burn things a lot faster. There's the intensity at which you are working at. So, if you're lifting a light weight and then you lift a heavier weight, that's more intense. So it's going to be burning things at a faster rate of speed. But these two variables are usually fairly fixed for the activity that you're doing. Yeah, you can get a little more muscle involved and you can go a little bit more intense. If you're hiking, you can start hiking faster and things. But for the most part, these things are relatively fixed and they're not going to have a big influence as far as creating a delta or a change. However, time is the magic variable. The more you do, the more you burn. And it's that simple. So literally, you can burn as many calories doing anything as any other activity. It's just a question of how fast are you doing it? How much? And that can be due to a number of other variables of programming and what exercises you're doing. So, for example, if you're like, I did this calisthenics workout and it was an hour and a half, worked my entire body, and I was doing, lots of different exercises. Circuit training kind of kept the burn going. But I did this weightlifting thing, and all it was 5x5 deadlift. You're going to burn a hell of a lot more calories doing the calisthenics workout simply because you're doing a lot more work. That's what it really boils down to. And of course, everything is adjustable as far as what you're doing, as far as progressions and regressions go. So when it comes down to how many calories you're burning, very rarely does it really determine or is determined by the actual activity you're doing. It's really just how long are you doing the activity in question, and is the activity you're doing using enough muscle and intense enough to keep that burn going on? So roundabout way to answer it, but I hope that helps you there, Raf. Adam is coming on saying, I think fit for what is such a good question before anyone begins their journey into physical culture. Absolutely. Because remember, my friends, that you're always going to be out of shape to some degree for most everything in life, right? I'm in terrible shape for running. I'm in terrible shape for swimming. I'm in terrible shape for rock climbing. You give me 1,000 activities that I could possibly be good for or possibly do this weekend, and I'm probably in pretty piss poor shape for 99.9 of them. And that's always how it's going to be because you can't specifically train for everything, right? I mean, I remember one time back in the day, I had this whole core routine and I was obsessed about working my abs and my core as thoroughly as possible. And I had all these different exercises and all these different pieces of equipment. And it took me all this time to complete and stuff. And I was like, my core is strong. It is optimized. It is as good as it gets. And then I went golfing with a coworker, and I've never been golfing before. And that action of swinging a golf club, like it's so many times, like 40, 50 times, made my abs sore the next day, which meant there was something I still was leaving addressed, which is why it's so important not to try to be fit for everything, but to be specific about what you want to be fit for. What kind of fitness are you specifically trained for? Now, if you really don't care, that's fine. A lot of people are like, I just want to be fit. I just want to have endurance. I just want to be strong, general physical preparedness is what they call it, GPP. If that's the case, don't worry about it. Just do general stuff. This is where the CrossFits and the Orange Theories and things like that come into shape. That's a great program for people who are like, I don't know, I just want to be fit for whatever, just generally kind of thing here and there. Great. That's good stuff for that. But the more specific you get, like I want to be able to be stronger for cycling. No, no, no. I want to be stronger for cycling in time trials. No, no, no. I want to be stronger for cycling in time trials that are also in triathlons. No, no. I want to be stronger for cycling in time trials that are in triathlons that are under 5 miles. Or probably not 5 miles, probably under 10 miles or whatever. The more specific your needs are, the more specific your training needs to be. But if you don't have a specific need, that's perfectly fine. I remember back in the day, we as coaches were always like, you got to set a specific goal, smart goals, all that. It's fine to be general, but general goals don't require specific training, diet, and exercise preparations, which is great, which means you got a lot of flexibility for things. So let's get right into the meat and potato of today's approaches then. What we're talking about is what is a fundamental approach to fitness and how does it actually work? And basically, as I was kind of alluding to begin with, that the basic way we usually think about fitness in our fitness culture is that it's method-based approach. That your success depends on what kind of diet and exercise habits you follow. Those things are important. I'm not saying it doesn't matter. But no, you're not going to lose weight because you lift a heavy or build muscle because you lift a heavy weight or follow a special program. You're not going to lose weight because you follow a special diet and you don't eat processed foods or seed oils or whatever the evil thing is of the day, right? Saw something the other day where people are lambasting oatmeal for Christ's sake, right? Those things really aren't that important in your success. I know a lot of people say, oh, this is it. No, it's not. It's just mumbo jumbo stuff to get your attention, get clicks and likes and all that sort of thing. How fitness really works is that it's not about your diet and exercise program. It's about understanding the fundamental processes that are actually governing your physical condition, your health and your fitness and your habits. And when it comes to fitness, there are particularly 3 of them. 4 if you count that of calorie balance, but calorie balance is kind of like a mix of the 2. So fundamentally, we've got 2 that are physiological and 1 that is based on human nature. So we've got the fundamental process of physiological conditioning. And this goes for all adaptations that our body goes through in response to all physical activity you ever engage in throughout your entire life. So it doesn't matter if you're actually working out in a gym or if you're lifting heavy boxes in a warehouse as a job, or if you have just a daily physical thing that you have to do, like carrying a baby around while talking on the phone or something like that. Your body's always in a constant state of adaptation. So this process is governed by the first half is a stimulus, and that's exposing your body to any environmental conditions, particularly in how it's functioning. And then it adapts. You have adaptation to that stimulus. And that's how exercise works. That's how all training works. That's how even things that you're subconsciously doing work. If I tapped this table like this, I just created a stimulus in my middle finger that is saying, okay, the skin here needs to be a little tougher. The bone may need to be a little bit harder. Those little osteoblasts and stuff in that finger are starting to get a little bit to work to make that bone a little bit stronger. I've known martial artists who literally with walls and makiwara boards, they just hit things to literally create the stimulus to make their hands more adept at punching through concrete and boards and hitting things. That's a stimulus. And right now, I've got adaptation going on. Now, it's not a big stimulus. You're not going to have a lot of adaptation. And that's why repetition matters. But that's fundamentally how physical conditioning works. Create a stimulus through a functional demand, primarily saying, hey, body, I need you to be able to do this thing. And then it just adapts. And usually that adaptation is completely on autopilot. You don't need to do anything for it. But it does help to have simple habits that don't get in your way. Make sure you get enough sleep, have a good, adequate diet, recover and rest from stress and fatigue, that sort of thing. And the stimulus is always based around the said principle, of course. You gain that which you challenge. It's like, okay, what kind of stimulus do I want? Well, what do you want to be able to do? What do you want to do with your body? Do you want to be able to stand on one leg? Do you want to hold a yoga pose? Do you want to be able to put your hand through concrete? Do you want to lift a heavier weight? What do you want to do? You gain that which you challenge. So the stimulus that you are striving for is to challenge the very functional qualities you want to develop. Power, strength, speed, stamina, stability, and the ability to just focus on holding a posture in Qigong or whatever. You gain that which you challenge. And the more you challenge it progressively, the more of a stimulus you'll have to acquire that capability on and on and on. That's how training works. So that's the first process, is the fundamental process of physiological conditioning. You have a stimulus, which hopefully is progressive over time, followed by adaptation. The second fundamental process is that of dietary support. And dietary support is simply consumption and intake of food and nutrients, and then the expenditure and utilization / storage of those nutrients and things. So this is the ratio between in versus out. And this is not just calories, but this is everything. This is protein, this is carbs, this is fat, this is vitamins, this is minerals, this is water and stuff. Your ability to effectively support yourself nutritionally and with diet depends on the ratio between how much you're consuming or how fast you're consuming things versus the rate at which you're expending it and utilizing it. And that's where your outcomes from diet come from. And again, a lot of times you hear it's like, oh, diet is all about eating this food, don't eat that food, or make sure you're eating these many calories and stuff. All this advice is not terribly bad, but it's based again on correlation and guesswork at best. It's not necessarily exactly what you need as a personal individual. And that's how dietary support works. When you are adequately supporting yourself with consuming things at a rate at which you are optimally using things like protein and calories and stuff, your diet is as healthy as you can get because you are supporting your nutritional needs. And if you're not, then things will start to become a little bit dwindled and handicapped, or they will become amplified. So that's how we're talking about the ability to have adequate dietary support. And then finally, the third process is that of motivation, emotional drive, if you will, because we human beings are fundamentally emotional creatures. Obviously, when it comes to fitness, our behaviors, our actions, the things that we do on a regular basis are what are determining our fate. There's all these books out there about the power of habit and things like that. But what a lot of times they don't really address is that what's the foundation of what habits you take is largely based on our emotional state. I always tell people this all the time. It's like, I don't care what you learn about nutrition and exercise. How you feel about the habits is what's going to determine on whether or not you practice them and how you practice them. You can know everything there is to know about nutrition and weight loss and carbs and sugar. In fact, you could have 5 PhDs in nutrition and weight management services and stuff. or educations. And yet, if Mary from accounting walks into the office carrying a box of donuts one Friday morning, how you feel in that moment about those donuts is the thing that's going to determine whether or not you're eating those donuts. Not what you learned or what you know and stuff. If what you learned influences how you feel, that does. But how you feel in that moment, how you feel your emotional orientation to those donuts, that's the thing in charge of whether or not you're going to eat donuts. You cannot outlearn your emotional drive. You're going to do what you feel. There's all those things in our, not just fitness culture, but in society at large. Feelings don't matter. Motivation doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you feel and stuff. And I kind of get what they're saying. Like, facts are facts. Like, this glass is filled with water, and it doesn't matter if you feel like it's filled with rocks. It's not rocks, obviously, because it's water. But ultimately, our behaviors, the choices that we are making on a daily basis, will be determined by our emotional state. The very fact that I am talking to you right now is determined by my emotional state. There's no logical good reason for me to be doing this. I don't get paid to do it directly. It takes a lot of time and energy. It's the middle of my Saturday. There's 100 other things that I could be doing right now. I've got all this equipment that I've got set up that I paid a lot of money for and everything, and I'm always trying to figure out how to make it better and stuff. So I'm investing time and energy to do this. Logically, there's no good reason why I should be holding this podcast right now. This is a ridiculous, stupid use of my resources. But I love doing this. This is the fastest hour of the week for me. I love talking with you folks. I love you coming in and asking questions. I love the fact that I can make something for an hour, put it out there on the internet, and help people for years potentially beyond it by leveraging information. So because of how I feel about it, that's why I'm here talking to you. And for the most part, motivation boils down to the process of the cost to benefit ratios that we have. The costs associated with things versus the perceived benefit. And it's perceived too. It doesn't necessarily matter objectively what the costs are. Like, I could have an objective cost of $10,000 a year to do this podcast. But if I feel like that's a small cost, relatively speaking, then I'm going to do it. But on the other hand, this podcast could cost me $5 a year. But if I feel that's like, oh, that's way too expensive, like that's ridiculous to pay anything whatsoever to host a podcast, there's so many great free tools out there, then I wouldn't do it. It's your subjective feelings about the cost and the benefits that you have. And you could have a habit that you engage in that objectively, you could be like, dude, this does not make any sense why you're doing this. It's like, yeah, but subjectively, I feel good when I do this workout. So it's our subjective perceived costs and benefits that are determining the emotional drive of the habits that we have. So those are the three fundamental processes of how fitness works, the fundamental approach to fitness. You have physical conditioning, which is stimulus followed by adaptation. You have dietary support, consumption versus utilization. And then, of course, you have emotional drive or emotional motivation, and that is perceived cost to perceived benefits. Those are the things that are truly governing and are in charge of your fitness, your physiological fate, and how well you're getting off with diet and exercise and all these things. It comes from those three things, not whether or not you're eating McDonald's or Evian water and salad greens, not whether or not you're lifting heavy versus lifting light with higher volume, whether you're doing calisthenics or weights or bands and stuff. That stuff is not in charge. However, it is important because what it does is it influences those processes. It does not control it, but it does influence it, which is why they do matter, but they only matter so much, and they only matter so much to certain people in some circumstances. So the quest to be in better shape doesn't come from what are you doing, what are you not doing? It's the question of what are you doing or not doing and how it influences those processes. That's the question. That's what we want to always be asking ourselves about that, because the more influence something has in that process to go in the direction you want to go in, the more you're going to get out of it. Now, I know that can be a little vague and a little bit more kind of out there in the ethers. So that's why a fundamental approach makes use of the three fundamental objectives. Because knowing those three processes is good, but it really doesn't help you do what you need to do, does it? It doesn't tell you when you get up in the morning, well, what should I have for breakfast? Well, what should I do in the gym or in my workouts? What should I do to help me have more motivation for the habits that I want to maintain? It doesn't really tell you what to do very much, but it is important as a foundation to just understand how the darn thing is working in the first place. So that's why it's important to understand the three fundamental objectives. The three fundamental objectives, they don't tell you exactly explicitly what to do, because anything that is telling you that, especially on the internet, is again more based on guesswork and correlation. You want to lose weight? Okay, don't eat Snickers bars. Make sure that you're getting plenty of protein in the morning, and don't drink alcohol. That's pretty sound advice for the most part, but know that it is just random guessing. I might as well be giving you advice from a magic 8 ball. Should I be eating bananas in the morning? Ask again later. Oh, damn, it's guesswork, because ultimately, how well you can influence those fundamental processes is going to be different for everybody. And it's always going to be changing too. What's best for you now is probably going to be best for you, something different that's best for you a year from now. So we need something that's flexible. Something that is rock hard and not flexible is probably going to just keep leading us astray. So these objectives are meant to be sort of like compass needles. They're meant to bring a level of awareness for you. And because of this awareness and this attention, you will see the opportunities and identify the abilities for you to have the biggest influence over those processes in your own life. And one of the best ways of observing this and how the human condition works with this is, have you ever been in like a public setting or an unusual area, like an airport or something you've never been to, right? There's all these sorts of people around, and there's stores and there's announcements and sounds, and it's all just this chaos all around you for the most part. And yet you really, really need to find a bathroom. You really need to use a restroom so bad. And so you're wandering around this strange open area, this airport or this market or whatever like that. And suddenly it's like anything in this cacophony of noise that even looks like it might possibly resemble the word bathroom, restroom, the little man or woman insignias that signify like a bathroom or something. Anything in that noise that signifies that, you pick it right out immediately. You would instantly find it. You're looking for just that sort of thing. And before, you could have walked by 10 bathrooms and you would have never noticed. But now it's because the urge is there. You're like, gotta find a bathroom, gotta find a bathroom. Oh, there it is, and you see it like from 20 yards away, It's like you see the word rest. It's not even the full word, it's just rest. And you're like, bathroom, great. And you go for it. That's because you're tuned your attention towards finding a bathroom, because you have that high need, that high motivation, right? So that's what these objectives are. They're not going to tell you how you should eat and how you should exercise, because quite honestly, I haven't a clue how you should be eating and exercising. I could just give you the general stuff that pretty much goes very well, but it's the stuff you already know anyway. Don't drink too much alcohol, avoid it if you can, drink lots of water, plenty of protein, have whole foods, don't eat too much, make sure you get exercise every day. Strength training is good if you want to build on. This stuff is the general stuff, but you already know this for the most part. And yet we get lost in the weeds so much by people trying to sell us on the details. Like, oh, you should never eat oatmeal. Don't you know oatmeal's bad for you? And that's the stuff that gets a lot of attention in our fitness culture. And honestly, it's largely a complete waste of time, because it's taken so much out of context, and they're taking so much correlation, liberties and freedom with it and stuff. It's just causing a lot of stress and fear mongering and stuff. And honestly, it doesn't help you. Whether or not you believed it or not doesn't matter. Whether or not you avoid oatmeal or not doesn't really matter, because it's just noise. It's all that noise. It's like you trying to find the bathroom, and someone comes up to you and you're like, "Have you read about the latest article on foam rubber installation?" And you're like, "Dude, leave me alone. I got to find a bathroom." And yet they won't leave you alone. That's what all this noise in our fitness culture and media and stuff is. It's just noise and stuff trying to distract you. And they're getting really good at it too, because they know how to pluck at the heartstrings. They understand there's no value in brainwashing. It's all emotional washing, if you will, trying to get you to feel a certain way, because that's the reality is. is, humans are emotional creatures. And all it takes is not to get you to think a certain way, but to feel a certain way. If I can get you angry, or if I can get you afraid or hopeful or anything, I can make you do anything I want. All it is about figuring out some way to get people to feel those emotions. If I can manipulate or influence your feelings, I can make you do anything. I can make you vote for whoever I want. I can make you give me money. I can make you buy products. I can make you quit work. I can make you join a cult. I can make you do seemingly the most illogical, asinine, cockamamie things in the world, because it's all about getting you to feel a certain way. Now, granted, I mean, that's, extremes, but human psychologists have known this for years. There's no power in telling people what to think. You could have someone think a certain thought a million times a day. It doesn't really do a whole heck of a lot. It's not about the facts and the information. It's all about getting people to feel a certain way. Advertisers have known this for centuries. If I can get you to feel, a positive neediness about a product, you'll buy it, even if it has nothing to do with the product whatsoever. Right? Every year you see this, especially around the holidays now. Where the beers and the diamond and jewelry stores, big time advertisements and stuff like that, basically saying if you love your wife, you love your the women in your life, you love people and stuff, you give them jewelry, and it works every time because it gets us to feel like, if I buy jewelry for my loved ones, that shows that I care and that I love. Never mind the fact that there's a million other things you could do, but it's that message that gets you to feel a certain way. So being aware of it and knowing these things is one of the best defenses against that emotional manipulation that's out there. But I digress. So these objectives are simple. Basically, the more you achieve these objectives, the more successful you will be, because the more you're influencing those fundamental processes in your own way. So the first fundamental objective, this is the objective for the fundamental objective for the process of physiological conditioning. Again, stimulus and adaptation. And that is train to stimulate. We have a stimulus that creates the whole thing going. So train for the purpose of creating a stimulus. And again, it comes down to, well, what do you want to be able to do with your body? Me tapping on this table, if my desire was I need to create a stimulus that's going to make my finger more tough so I can hit boards with it and break it, that's going to be effective. Now, if I want to be a marathon runner, this is creating a stimulus, but is it a stimulus that's going to help me run a marathon? Absolutely not. So that's why the objective that we set for our training should always be, what kind of stimulus are you trying to create? And the more you can fulfill the objective of that stimulus, the more effective your workouts are. This is why people will be like, well, how do I know if my workout was effective? And a lot of times we go off of like red flags, like, well, I worked up a sweat. Well, my muscles are sore. Well, I felt a burn in the muscle. Well, I got a good pump. Well, on and on and on. Even things like, well, I lifted a heavier weight. That means I'm stronger, right? Not necessarily. There's lots of ways you could have lifted a heavier weight without getting stronger. But when you get really dialed into what is my body doing, what kind of stimulus am I trying to create, then that's going to be a lot more of that compass needle. And whatever you do that creates that stimulus to a greater degree, it's going to be more successful. Use whatever training method you want. Use whatever equipment you like. Use whatever program you want. Because this is how this works, is what's going to be the best for you, as we'll get into in a little bit. But when you just sit down and you ask yourself, okay, I've got option A and option B, which one is going to be the best one, I think, for me, creating a stimulus? Let's say you want to make a muscle stronger. Okay, so you've got bands and you've got push-ups or free weights. Which one is going to be the easiest thing for you to create that stimulus in your muscles? Now, the answer should be extremely obvious. And if it's not, the chances are it probably doesn't matter very much. But this is one of the reasons why I usually don't take part in a lot of like fitness challenges and different devices, or experiment with new things that I can look at it and understand fundamentally what it's going to do for me achieving that objective. I'm like, yeah, I know that's not the objective I want to achieve. So why would I bother with that thing? It's very clear and straightforward on what things work and what things don't. So that's the fundamental objective of training is train to stimulate. That's the point of training. It's not to work hard. It's not to stress out the body. It's not to work up a sweat. Train to stimulate. That's what we're here for. And there's three fundamental stimuli that we can go for in our training. The first of which is simply energy burn. Burning calories, burning off stress, burning off emotional energy and things like that. Train to stimulate to burn things off. And that's really simple. Like I was explaining earlier, it's largely about just time and effort. The more effort you put in, the more time you spend, the more you burn. It's that simple, regardless of the activity that you're actually doing. So that's the first objective, is burning energy. Second objective is neuromuscular conditioning, basically working your muscles a certain way. And this is usually strength training, but it doesn't have to be. It could be hill sprints. It could be something along the lines of coordination as well. Like if I want to stand on one leg or something. But that's a neuromuscular conditioning where we're trying to make our muscles effectively work progressively better. And then finally, you just simply have that of proficiency, getting better at something, learning how to juggle could be a form of proficiency, shooting a basketball, hitting a golf ball straight, whatever the case there may be. So those are typically the three classifications of objectives in exercise. Are you burning energy? Are you trying to condition your neuromuscular system? Or are you just trying to get better at the skill of what you are trying to do? And how do you know if your workout was effective? You fulfill those objectives. And the more you fulfill those objectives, the more effective the workout is. So that's trying to stimulate. Now, when it comes to diet, what are we trying to do? What's our objective there? Eat to satisfy. Again, a lot of times in our fitness culture, it's like, oh, a healthy diet is you don't eat these foods and you eat these foods and stuff like that. Again, that's correlation, that's guesswork. That doesn't guarantee you what you're going to do. That does not hold any promise of success. But when you are satisfying your appetites in whatever way you see fit, that's going to make your diet healthier. And there are four fundamental appetites. There's the appetite of hunger. There's the appetite of nutritional support, getting your actual nutrients that you need, that your body needs. There's the support of metabolic support. So you're eating enough and you're eating enough of things that are giving you the ability to have the energy for the things you need to do. So if you're like, a lot of times, sometimes I'll have people working out later in the day and they're just dragging and stuff. And I'm like, did you eat today? You eat breakfast and stuff? I'm like, oh, I haven't eaten since like 2 p.m. yesterday or whatever. I'm like, yeah, no wonder you're dragging. Like you haven't eaten anything. You're on an empty tank. Why do you think you can have a really good workout right now? And I know some people, they're like, oh, I intermittent fasting, I had so much energy. I've never been that guy. Yesterday I had a 13-hour workday, just one client after the other like this. I barely ate all day. And then when I was finally done, I met a friend of mine and she's like, what do you want? I'm like, food. I need food. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so hungry. And then I just went and I just ate a ton of food. And I've noticed that whenever I follow that pattern, my ability to produce energy and keep myself running a good, just tanks, it craters. I'm tired and I'm exhausted because I haven't really been eating anything. And then I'm tired and I'm exhausted just because I ate a huge crap ton of food, right? And I know that's not the way that works best for me because it's a terrible metabolic support for me. Now, if I did it regularly and things, would it be better? Probably, because I'd get used to it, but so what? Big deal. Like, I don't have the goal of getting used to intermittent fasting. I just want to have good energy. So I've just noticed for me that being able to eat continuously, smaller meals throughout the day, that's just what keeping me running hot, keeps me going pretty good, high energy and stuff. So that's metabolic support. And then lastly, of course, you have the power of hedonic support. And hedonic support is basically satisfying all the pleasurable aspects of food. Because if we're just feeding the body and giving ourselves what it needs, that's great. But food is not just fuel. I used to be food is just fuel kind of thing. It doesn't matter if it tastes good and stuff. That's nonsense. Food is supposed to satisfy everything about our needs and wants and desires, even emotionally. Sometimes, yes, Emotional eating can be a very good thing. Sometimes we eat something, it's like, I just really need a cheeseburger right now. And when you give yourself exactly what you want, that appetite is satisfied in short order. So those are your four fundamental appetites. And the more you can adequately satisfy them, the healthier your diet is, regardless of any other variables, regardless of what kind of food you're eating, regardless of what your diet looks like, regardless of how many times a day you're eating, regardless of whether or not it's vegan or paleo or whatever. The better you satisfy those four appetites, the healthier your diet is. Full stop. And that's, again, it's going to be general healthy stuff anyway that's going to do that. A lot of whole foods, a lot of nutrient dense foods. Don't eat too much. Don't eat too much processed stuff. Treat yourself, but don't overdo it. Don't overdo the alcohol kind. I mean, the stuff that's going to help you do that is general healthy eating advice that we all know we should be following anyway. So it's not going to come from some sort of like, oh, I eat nothing but celery juice for 3 days a week or stuff. That's not going to be the way to satisfy those sorts of things. So that's your fundamental objective of a healthy diet and nutritional support is satisfying your four fundamental appetites. Eat to satisfy. And then finally, the last one for your motivation, emotional support is personal alignment. You want to find personal alignment with your habits. Now, what do I mean by personal alignment? Personal alignment means that you are utilizing habits that work with your circumstances, with you, right? So they work with your schedule, with your finances, with your equipment, with your preferences, with your abilities. I could tell you all day long how great cross country skiing is for burning fat and calories. But if you live in Miami, and you don't have a flake of snow in the forecast, it's not good advice because it's not going to be in alignment with your environment. And so this is where a lot of people go wrong is we always are looking for what's the best diet? What's the best ab exercise? What's the best way to build muscle? What's the best exercise for this or that or blah, 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 blah. And we're never really considering what's the best thing for me to be practicing. Case in point, like going to the gym. Some people would rather have a root canal than go to the gym. They feel uncomfortable there. They feel self-conscious. They don't like the environment. It's out of their way. Some gyms, they're really not that clean a place, so if you're kind of a little nervous about germs and things like that. So some people would be like, I hate going to the gym. Now, I could tell you all day long how great the gym is, how wonderful it is, that you can't get in shape without a gym, yada, yada, yada. But forcing yourself to go to a gym and when you really don't want to or like to do that is pulling you out of personal alignment. However, you could say, I love being outside. I love the sunshine. I love the natural outdoors, the wind in my face, the grass under my feet and stuff. It's like, okay, then maybe going out to the park and taking a kettlebell with you and doing a kettlebell workout in the park. That could be much more in alignment for you and your preferences. But you could be like, yeah, but I don't know how to use a kettlebell. I don't even have a kettlebell. And then even if you got one from a friend of yours, you're like, what am I doing? How do I use this with lower back and stuff? It's like, okay, that's no longer in alignment for you to use the kettlebell workout. Maybe some dumbbells then, some basic dumbbells or some bands, and you hook them up to a flagpole or something. Oh, I love using dumbbells. I love dumbbells. Are so proficient with them. I've used them for years. Okay, that's in better alignment for you. That's a better personal alignment. Working with your scenario is basically what I'm talking about. With your circumstances. Why? Because it's going to give you the greatest chance of creating the stimulus you're after with your training. It's going to give you the greatest chance of satisfying your four fundamental appetites. And it's going to give you the greatest chance of having as much perceived benefit from your habits with the lowest perceived cost, therefore improving your motivation. So align to shine, as I like to say, that's the title of one of the chapters in the upcoming book, is if you can have more personal alignment, it doesn't matter if someone's like, oh, cycling, like I'm a mountain biker, I'm a cyclist, right? You could tell me all day long how running is a better way to burn fat and calories. I don't care. It's not important to me because I don't like to run. It doesn't feel good on my body. I don't enjoy it. Every time I do it, I'm like, I could be on a bike right now and going a lot faster for the effort I'm putting into it. It's not my thing. Now, there have been times in my life where I've kind of forced myself to keep practicing running, and I do get more into it a little bit. It does feel better. But given the choice, I will always take pedal pushing over running any day of the week because it's a lot more fun for me. It's a lot more enjoyable for me. It's something I'm a lot better at. So I'm just going to feel more proficient at it. And I can do it a heck of a lot longer. So cycling for me helps me achieve a lot better personal alignment than running. That's why cycling is 9 times out of 10 going to be the better way for me to go about it, regardless of what the science or the data says about running versus cycling for burning fat and calories. Now, you, on the other hand, could be the complete opposite. I've known people who love to run and they hate cycling. Again, that reason alone should be why they should run as opposed to riding a bike. But there are so many ideas in our fitness culture that tell people you've got to fit square pegs into round holes, that this is the thing you're supposed to do. Now sit down, shut up, and don't argue with me. Just go and make yourself do it. That is not the way to go about doing things. Yes, there are some rules that you're just not going to be able to get around with. But when it comes to fitness, there are so many options that you have when it comes to diet and exercise. There are very, very, very few things that you absolutely have to do. And that's the biggest lesson that comes from a fundamental approach to fitness is that you have so many options. And if there's something in your repertoire, something about your diet and exercise habits that if you looked at it and you're like, God, I really wish I didn't have to do this thing to be in shape, chances are really good you don't have to do it. And because of that, understanding that means that not only can you save yourself a lot of stress and time and money and energy on mind, body, and lifestyle, but you can also free those things up to do something else that's probably going to be a hell of a lot more effective for you. And so you're cheating yourself by forcing yourself to do those things that are pulling you out of alignment just because someone said it was the best way to go about doing things. Just because someone out there says, oh, you should never eat pizza. You should never eat sausage because it's a processed food or whatever like that. But if you find that if you have a little bit of sausage pizza in your diet once in a while, it just takes that edge off and you can have a much healthier diet in the long run overall, then eating sausage pizza is going to be a healthier option for you. Full stop. It's never about what's best for a program or according to some expert. It's really what's best for you. And that's where the alignment comes from, because the better you can align, the better you're going to satisfy your appetites, the better you're going to create a strong stimulus. And not only that, but you're going to be able to create a stronger stimulus and satisfy your appetites even more. And you're going to be able to stick to it, and you're going to be able to do it far more consistently. And therefore, you win, win, win much more. And there's a lot less cost to it, which is only going to help you. Because remember, my friends, one of the last lessons that I'll leave you with is that success always follows the path of least resistance. Well, it's a little redundant because technically we always follow the path of least resistance. We're always doing the thing that takes the least amount of resistance in our daily lives and habits. That doesn't mean there's no resistance. It just means less resistance, sort of thing. And so anytime that we can reduce resistance and increase the benefits of what we want to achieve, then that's only going to help you. It's only going to be a step in the right direction. So that's the basic general overview, my friends, of my next book coming out on the Red Delta Project here. It's in the editing stage right now, but it will be coming out hopefully within the next month or two. I will keep you updated. Make sure you're checking out the Red Delta Project Instagram for updates to that, as well as updates to all the other things that I come out with, the videos, podcasts, things like that. Subscribe to the YouTube channel here, and also make sure you're subscribed to the newsletter over at reddeltaproject.com, where those announcements will be coming as well, with tidbits coming out weekly, sometimes bi-weekly, depending on when I feel like putting it out there. So thank you, everybody, for listening, coming in with your questions and everything. I do sincerely appreciate it. Again, some tech issues and things like that, some things I've got to reevaluate and reassess, but I appreciate everybody's patience, and I will talk to you next week. Till then, be fit and live free.